Good morning, everyone. Reynald here. I want to say thanks for everybody who happens to be here right now. We are actually doing the live streams a little bit earlier than normal. So if you are here and an early bird, I want to thank you so much for joining. And I always appreciate early birds. I always try to get to places early, also, just in case you never know what could happen. Uh, or what could be said that doesn't get said later on that only the early people get to appreciate. So thank you. But thanks for everybody for joining the live stream. So we're going to go ahead and kick things off pretty soon. But before we do, I want to go ahead and kick off our TikTok Thursday segment. So, producer, let's see what we got for this Thursday. You say programmer. I say consultant. You say software engineer. I say systems engineer, front end, back end, full stack, developer, all paid to copy and paste. Yeah. Yeah. We all get that inside joke. We have an exciting stream for you today, everybody. Okay, so we're going to be, I want to say a quick hello to Bavik, KYTTDK, alias. Uh, you guys have been here. You guys just got here, and I appreciate that. By the way, just drop in the chat if you knew that we were going to be here early, or if you just happened to be hanging out in our on our channel, and then you saw us and you started chatting. Um, so we have an exciting stream. We're going to be talking about accessibility in VS Code. So I want to go ahead and not waste any more time and introduce Isidor Nikolic to get this started. Hi, Isidor.
Hey, Reynald. Hi. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me as a guest. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks for
So
joining. And yeah, I think you're on a different time zone. For you, it's not too early, right? What time zone are you in right now?
I'm in the Central European time zone. It's 4:33 in the afternoon here in Europe.
Okay. Yeah, it's 7:30 for me a.m. here in LA. But yeah, go ahead. Give us a summary of what you're going to be chatting about today.
Yeah, so as I said, thanks for having me. So my name is Isidor. I work as a program manager on VS Code. And today we'll be talking about accessibility, how we do accessibility in VS Code and how we make sure that every developer out there can use VS Code with joy. Accessibility is one of our core principles. And if you have any questions regarding accessibility or anything, just drop them in the chat. I'll be happy to answer the questions as best as I can. Even though we'll be talking about accessibility today, I also work on other areas as well. So I'm sharing my screen here, and you can see it's VS Code, and as you might expect on the VS Code stream. So every feature that we do and we design it with accessibility in mind. However, some features go ahead.
So Isidore, quick question.
Yep.
I don't want to make any assumptions, but so can you define what accessibility means in terms from your perspective? I think most people might know, but there might be a few that don't.
Yeah, that's a great question. So at least for me, it means that every developer out there can use VS Code successfully. So imagine we have lots of, for example, blind developers that use VS Code using a screen reader. Screen reader is a tool which helps blind developers to interact with the computer. It reads what's on the screen based on focus. So that's one example. Another example can be, imagine developers who cannot use the keyboard for various medical reasons. And then how would you interact with VS Code without the keyboard using voice commands, for example?
Got it.
And another is something which I wanted to demo right now is there's also developers with ADHD, so that don't want to have a lot of noise on the screen. And sometimes VS Code can be very noisy with notifications popping up on the right. There's just too many details. And with those developers in mind that want a very calm experience, we designed a thing which is called Zen Mode, and it can be easily toggled. So what I did here is I just opened the command palette with command Shift P, which lists all the commands which we had, and I will just toggle Zen Mode. And then you can see, instead of VS Code having all these details on the left, on the right, now we just have one editor in the center without any notification or frustrations, and then developers can just focus on that. And this is particularly helpful for developers who have a hard time focusing for various medical
Nice.
Does that answer your question, Reynald? Or
it does. Now, if somebody said, "Oh, okay, that's cool," but is there like an area in VS Code or like a resource where we could just see right off the bat bullet points, the accessibility features, like features that are not common in code editors, but that are specifically designed for users that tend to have a harder time because the code editor is not really designed for them? Or it's like there's an assumption, and
Yeah, that's a good question. So usually we try to make all features that all users can use all features happily, and rarely do we just design one feature for a subset of our users in mind. For example, let's say that for blind users, they rarely use the mouse when they interact with VS Code. So they use keyboard and keyboard focus. So for example, now you can see that my keyboard is in the Explorer on the left. I'm pressing down, and as I'm pressing down, I'm navigating through the Explorer. As I press Shift Tab, I basically moved focus up on the toolbar. I can use left and right to move focus through every action. And I can use Tab as a way to move focus all the way through VS Code. So now you can see that the focus is in the top right of the editor. And now the focus jumped into the editor. So while this feature was that the keyboard focus moves naturally and nicely, while this is a priority for blind users, still all users profit from this, since for all users it makes sense that the keyboard navigation, keyboard focus work in a nice way, because some users are just faster with the keyboard. Even though they can use the mouse, they just want to use the keyboard. And speaking of keyboard navigation, there's actually one thing which we also added mostly for our blind developers in mind, but it can be useful for everybody. And that is that easy way to move the keyboard focus over the whole of VS Code. Because currently, when you saw I was pressing Tab, the thing is that we don't want to have too many tab stops. Tab stops are places in VS Code where tab will stop. So the idea is that you don't have to press a lot of tabs to navigate the whole workbench. So we introduced this experience, which we call F6. So now you can see the focus is in the editor. I'm pressing F6. The focus moved down in the debug console. If I press F6 again, now the focus is in the status bar. So you can see it at the bottom. Let me just hide this thing. Sorry about that. So you can see that the focus is down in the status bar. Now I'm using left and right. Let me actually turn on screencast mode. That might help here. I'm not sure if people know this. Did this work? So yeah, so now screencast mode basically will just render what I'm clicking, so I don't have to describe, but I will still describe. So now my focus is in the status bar, and I'm using left and right to navigate in the status bar. But if I continue doing F6, Now my focus is in the activity bar on the left, and I can use up and down to focus through those actions. If I press F6 again, I'm back in the Explorer. I can use up and down to navigate in the Explorer. If I press F6 again, I'm back in the editor. So just imagine this feature as a bird's eye level view of focus, that you can quickly focus through the big areas, and then when you want to drill into an area, you can use left and right, for example,
Nice.
or tab.
So screencast mode just shows all your keyboard strokes that you're hitting?
Screencast mode, yeah, that's a separate feature. So that one we didn't really design, we didn't really create for accessibility, but it's still a cool feature when you're when you want to show a demo using VS Code, and then when you want the video to also explain what you actually hit on the keyboard. So that's why I turned it on, just so people who want to visually also get cues what I'm actually doing on the keyboard while I'm demoing. That's why I turned it on.
Nice, because it almost seemed as if it could have been part of the accessibility. And by the way, the reason I asked my question regarding is like an area to see, immediately when I thought of accessibility, I thought about my iPhone, and it's probably like that for Android also. When you can go into settings, there's an area that's called accessibility, and then you see all these extra features that sometimes you don't think about. And like I often go there if I want to use my phone and screencast from it, and then actually use a mouse. That's under accessibility, to be able to like use my mouse pointer on my phone. So I didn't know if there was like an area that someone could see like a group of features, but I know what you're saying in regards to you want features to be for everyone, and like not like a segregated group of features for a segregated set of people. That was your point,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that, but still, I guess some features are more for the accessibility audience. That's why we have docs for accessibility, where we mention some of this, but still, as I said, we try to design every feature that the broadest audience possible in VS Code can use it. So for example, another feature which I love, and people probably know it, is like Command Shift P. It's our quick pick, which shows all the commands. And you think, whoa, that's like any command which you search for, we will show there. So now I'm searching for some debug commands. I can search for some, I don't know, focus commands. And this is great for everybody because you can easily access all the commands there in one place. And they're especially great for example, for our blind developers, because this is an easy way using the keyboard to access all the things in one place. So you just use the keyboard, you type exactly what you want, you press enter, and that's it. Apart from that, one additional thing which is also makes everybody's life easier is that all these commands, you can customize their key bindings. So as you see here on the right, next to focus next debug console, vrender was actually the command to what's actually the keyboard shortcut to trigger this command. And this can be customizable. You can just go here to the file, and then I believe it's here, Code Insider's preferences, keyboard shortcuts, and then we have a whole view where you can just configure any keyboard shortcut for any command which you show in the quick pick. And this is the way that you can customize every key binding that suits your particular needs. And this is also very appreciated by our users.
So all our keyboard shortcuts can be customizable?
Yes,
Customizable?
yes.
That's
Yes,
great.
absolutely. Every keyboard shortcut is customizable. You can even, if you want to go fancy, we have when clauses, which means what's the condition when you want this keyboard shortcut to be active. So for example, you can use the same keyboard shortcut to do one thing when you're in the editor and another thing maybe when you're in the Explorer, for example, if you really want to be creative.
Cool. So let's hit some of the questions here in the comments.
Sure.
I see Rohit Kumar asks, how do we show notification in the top right corner in VS Code? Is there a way to do that?
So currently we show notifications in the bottom right corner. So they're right here. You can just click on the bottom right in the status bar, or as I said, everything is command in VS Code. So you can just go here and say you can go to the quick pick and you can say notifications, show notifications, and that will just show the bottom right. Okay, now I don't have any notifications, but imagine that I had some. So we show them there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess he had some reason to position it separately, the notification, and wanted to know if there's a way that we can shift it so that it could be on the upper right-hand corner, upper left-hand corner.
Yeah, that is currently not possible. That's currently not possible. But for all, that's sort of a feature request. And for all feature requests, I suggest just to go to our GitHub page. Maybe we can share the link. GitHub page, and just open a new feature request. If you have some ideas how we can improve VS Code, just let us know. And especially if some things are not working as expected, if, for example, because today we're mostly talking about accessibility, if something in VS Code is not accessible, so we try to make everything accessible. Everything should work as intended for all our users. If something is not working, for example, with screen readers, or if somewhere focus doesn't behave as we anticipate it should, please let us know, and we will try to fix this as soon as possible. So just go to the GitHub issue, to our repository, just open a new issue. You don't have to be a pro to do this. It's enough just to have a GitHub account, and just feel free to share your thoughts, and we'll reach out to you. We don't have like a support team. Our devs and PMs directly look at these issues, and we directly talk to our users there.
Okay. Now here's a question by KYTDK, and he asked a simple question for us who are not blind to just be a little bit more educated.
Yeah.
How is a blind person going to code? Do you know, like, are there any?
Yeah, so
what's the typical procedure? What do they use to do that?
Yeah. So first, I'm not blind, so I'm not talking from first-hand experience, but I've talked to a lot of blind coders. So what I'm telling now is like second-hand, I guess, experience, if that's the English term. So the first thing you need is you need to turn on a screen reader. Screen readers are apps that help you interact with your machine. On Windows, a screen reader popular one is called NVDA. On Linux, it's called Orca. On macOS, it's called VoiceOver. Now I'm on macOS, so I will turn on VoiceOver. So to turn on VoiceOver, you basically press Command F5. Now VoiceOver turned on, but unfortunately, I don't think you see what I'm seeing because I'm just sharing my window. But the thing with VoiceOver is, as I'm moving focus, now VoiceOver is reading what the focus is. So you can, now I'm on line 6 of the file debug commands. If I was, because now I'm using VoiceOver, VoiceOver would now read to me, import star SNLS from quote VS / NLS quote call semicolon. So VoiceOver would read the whole line to me. As I move the focus to line number 7, VoiceOver would read the next line to me. So everything is based on focus. When I move the focus to the Explorer, so you see now the focus is on the left in the Explorer. When I move the focus to debug editor actions TS, screen reader would read debug editor actions TS. But to really show this experience, I'm not sure if I should reshare my screen so you see VoiceOver, but maybe I can if there's more questions on top of this. But it's the way how me from talking to blind coders, how they use the screen readers, they really have a very advanced sense of hearing, which means that when voiceover is reading to blind coders, it's reading at the 8x speed. So imagine how I'm talking and then 8 times faster.
Really?
And
Wow.
blind coders are very experienced in interpreting these fast sounds, and that's why they can be much more productive than if I were to use a screen reader today. And that's in short. If there are follow-up questions, I can also try to share my whole screen and then try to represent this in more detail.
So another question here is, and thanks for that explanation, by the way, because yeah, I didn't know about that. Elias Snorason asked, in what order do you navigate the parts with focus next part F6?
Yeah, good question. So depends on where the current focus is. So if the current focus is in the editor, we thought let's do clockwise. So that's the philosophy. So from editor we go clockwise below to the panel, so where the debug console is now. Then next one clockwise we go down to the status bar. Then clockwise we go next to the activity bar. Then next clockwise we go to the explorer. Next clockwise we go back to the editor. So that's how we designed it. I also have one more short thing to demo, but if there are more questions, feel free, Reynald.
Yeah, there's just a couple more, and then we could continue.
Yeah.
So Raju Nellori asks, how do you jump from braces of loop? Not really sure.
I also don't. Can you maybe clarify, Raju? Maybe ask a follow-up question. I'm not sure what you're referring to. If you can maybe be more elaborate on that one.
Okay. And Leonardra, yeah, if you can just, it's kind of like out of scope the topic. She's asking about Docker. She's like, what is the specific objective of Docker? We'll respond to that like after, just so that we don't get sidetracked, but just kind of like for now, just Google containers, just so we could be able to like manage a lot of different operating systems or programs in its own separate containers, so they don't conflict for a variety of reasons, which I won't get to right now.
It's great for development.
Yeah, developers love it. So Isidor, go ahead, continue with your next demonstration.
Yeah, I just wanted to show one more demo. The problem is with this demo, so I'm sharing my screen, I'm not sharing the sound. But still, so now I added the breakpoint on line 9, and on line 11, I'm like breaking the code up, so some errors will show. And then, as I said, when blind coders, when they navigate on line 11, the screen reader would read the content of this line, and this would say import.t, but it wouldn't actually read that there's an error on the line. The problem with this is when we design these features is how can we be concise such that we're not reading too much for the screen reader, such that blind coders are not overwhelmed with information, but they just get the information which is important. Because of that, we introduced a thing which is called audio cues. So now when I navigate to line 11, the screen reader will start reading the content of this line, but we will also play a sound which represents an error. Now, unfortunately, I cannot share sounds, but my computer is playing a sound when I stop here. And then users can figure out, oh, there's actually an error. And then they can, for example, press Command-Shift-M, which opens the problems view in the bottom. And that one has, that one has more details about the problems. Same as when I navigate to a line with the breakpoint, we play a special sound for the breakpoint. And while we designed this feature with accessibility in mind, I think it can be absolutely useful for everybody. You can try it out by going to the settings, by typing audio cues. And one particular one, which I think it's great to use, is, for example, audio cue on debug break. So on debug break, you can say, yeah, I want to use that sound. So there's auto on and off. Off means don't play the sound. On means play the sound. Auto means only play the sound if a screen reader is detected. So if you don't use a screen reader, turn on if you want to try. And it can be good if you, for example, have a long running program. Maybe you go to the kitchen and you're waiting for a breakpoint to be hit. And then when the breakpoint gets hit, VS Code will actually play a sound. You can come back from drinking coffee. Similar with the task ended. And this, we introduced this milestone. Maybe you're running a long running task, which is compiling your TypeScript to JavaScript. And at the end, you want VS Code to play a sound. So you can just turn that on, task ended, and VS Code will play a sound whenever a task is done, which I think can be useful for everybody.
Nice. Now, how do you guys go about coming up with features that you want to add on, because it's kind of related to accessibility, even though it's for everyone? Are there, do you do that based on user requests that people drop in, or is there like an area people could just request that specifically for accessibility, or it's just like the general questions like any other user?
So we're big believers in self-hosting in VS Code, which means we use all our products, and that highly influences what we do. So we're a small team in VS Code, and for example, for accessibility, for example, blind developers, we don't have a blind developer who's working on VS Code as part of the VS Code team, which means that we cannot really self-host on the accessibility features which we primarily do. So that's why it's particularly important for us to react to user feedback. And that's why user feedback in that area is particularly important, because we are not experts yet. Okay. So that's why we really listen to the community. We take all the feedback very seriously. And mostly it's on GitHub. It's also on Gitter. We have a Gitter accessibility chat, and there's a blind coders mailing list, which is called Program L. And we listen to what are the coders complaining about there. And usually we will try to identify patterns in problems, and then based on those problems, we will try to come up with creative solutions to help our users. And then we always try to, as everything in VS Code, we try to do iterative improvements, which means we publish something to the product, we listen to feedback, we try to improve it more, we listen more to the users. So that's how we sort of prioritize and figure out what to do, what's next.
Now, I know some programmers might think, it's a Microsoft, and they're such a huge company, it might take forever for them to even get to me. But I kind of feel that, the turnaround time is probably much shorter than some people expect. So if a developer posted a question, is there a general turnaround time before they get a response to acknowledge that the question exists, and then actually another time period where it gets addressed?
Yeah, so as I said, for our GitHub repository, since we're directly doing this, so the engineers and the PMs, we don't have a support team, and I think that's rare in the industry, and we get lots of issues there. So we still try to respond in a timely manner in a couple of days. However, if it's a question like, I don't know, how do I set up VS Code to run Python? Those we will try not to answer. We will try to forward people to Stack Overflow, since everybody can help with that. However, if it's something very specific, if it's a bug, for example, focus movement in the Explorer is not as expected, here are the reproducible steps. Those we take very seriously. Also, if some, for whatever feature requests, ideas which were nicely explained, we take very, very seriously. And those we will usually respond. It doesn't mean that we will immediately do them, but we will immediately think about them. And based on that, we start discussing in the team. The feature area owner will make a decision, do we act on it or not? But usually we're very fast. If it's a bug, and if it's a good reproducible bug, it very often happens that we fix it the next day. And but this is subjective. What's a good reproducible bug?
Yeah. So basically, questions that you can't easily Google, we'll pay attention to and respond in a timely manner. Right?
Yeah.
All right. Was there any other feature that you wanted to?
No, that's what I prepared for today, Reynald.
Okay, great. All right. Well, then in that case, I want to go ahead and move on to our short segment, which is a lightning round. Five questions I'm going to ask you. All right. And so you just answer them within 3 seconds. Top of your mind. All right. So here we go. What's your biggest pet peeve?
What's my biggest
pet peeve? Thing that annoys you.
That annoys me. Too many notifications in VS Code.
Okay, got that. The scariest thing you've ever done for fun?
Oof. Watch the scary movie. They're very scary. I hate them. It wasn't fun at all.
Okay. I get that. When I was a kid, I was always thinking like, why would I want to pay to go get scared? Like,
exactly. I still don't get it.
Exactly. But now I like it. All right. Is it GIF or is it GIF?
GIF, I guess, but English is not my native language, so don't listen to me.
Well, there's a lot of Americans that go back and forth on that too. So, last 2 questions. What one VS Code extension can you not live without?
GitHub pull requests and issues, because I work a lot with GitHub and it really helps my flow.
Nice. And the last question, if you had your own major talk show and you had your first major guest to have, who would it be that you can interview? Anyone in the world?
Good question. I don't know, Mick Jagger.
Okay.
Or Kate Richards, or both of them.
All right. Nick's still doing his thing. I think he's still touring, right?
Yeah, he is. I'm a fan, but I still think, why would I have him? He had a long and interesting life, so he definitely has a lot to share.
He definitely does. Thanks so much, Isidor, for this presentation on accessibility. Okay. I want to ask before we close out, if anyone wants to follow you, get in touch with you, what's the best way to
so the best so I have Twitter, so it's Twitter and then my name Isidor and then N, and I use the same GitHub, I use the same account name on GitHub, so feel free to also ping me on both those platforms.
Got it. All right, cool. Well, this has been awesome. Producer, if you can go ahead and drop our social media links for everyone to be able to keep in touch with us through our other channels, such as TikTok at VS Code. And also we have our YouTube channel, which is growing really fast. And that's so awesome. People are really enjoying the content that we're putting out there. And that should be it for this stream, folks. We will see you in the next stream. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye.